Thank you everyone for joining our webinar tonight, Protecting Critical Resources in the Highlands. One of the reasons we felt this is an important subject for a webinar is the enormity of misconceptions and misinformation about the Highlands Act and the Highlands Council. The Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act was passed in 2004, generating strident opposition, and that controversy still dogs it today, which doesn't help foster accurate information about Highlands matters. And that both the Highlands Council and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection share jurisdiction in the Highlands. In some places it overlaps, in other places there are clear lines of regulatory authority. This creates some further complexity. The legislation divided the Highlands into two distinct regions, the preservation area and the planning area. The goals and objectives of the Highlands Act, protecting and enhancing the region's water resources while also providing opportunities for economic growth, would be met differently in each of these two subregions. In the preservation area, which is primarily a line drawn around a nearly contiguous forest of roughly 415,000 acres, the goals of the Act would be met by strict land use regulation promulgated by the state, by the Department of Environmental Protection. In the planning area, the goals and objectives of the Act would be implemented not by the state, but by municipal land use ordinances that are consistent with the Highlands Regional Master Plan. The Highlands Act stipulated the formation of a Highlands Council, whose chief responsibility was to draft and adopt a Highlands Regional Master Plan and oversee voluntary municipal and county conformance. And as you can see in this map, the darker green is the preservation area, really the interior of the Highlands, the forested interior, and the lighter green is the planning area. For the most part, DEP has jurisdiction over the preservation area under their rules known as the Highlands Rules, which are at NJAC 7:38. The Highlands Council primarily works with municipalities in the planning area, encouraging that they work with the Highlands Council to take advantage of the several benefits that come with conformance and to adopt land use ordinances that are consistent with the Highlands Regional Master Plan. However, the DEP does consult with the Highlands Council for some major permit decisions in the preservation area, such as the extensions of sewer service areas, water allocation permits, and the designation of Highlands redevelopment areas. Of the 88 municipalities in the Highlands, 5 are entirely in the preservation area, and 47 are split between preservation and planning area, and 36 are entirely in the planning area. If you look at this map, the light green is the Highlands physiographic province of New Jersey. The red outline is somewhat different, and that is the legislated Highlands Administrative Region, which is under the jurisdiction of the Highlands Council and the DEP's preservation area rules. As you can see, the outline of the legislated Highlands is a little larger than the actual province. And that is because when they drew the Highlands region, they included all of the municipalities. So the outlier municipalities are only really partially in the Highlands region, but as far as their administration, they are considered Highlands municipalities. So let me introduce you to our guests. Lisa Plevin is the executive director. I remember Lisa when she was at EPA Region 2. She was the chief of staff for the region that covers New York, New Jersey, the Virgin Islands. I think that's the entirety of the region. And she was always welcoming to the Highlands Coalition, as she continues to be so today as executive director of the Highlands Council. Just prior to working with the Highlands Council, Lisa held the role of deputy director for the environment and energy for Governor Murphy's transition team. She served as a policy lead for the Environment and Energy Transition Committee, collaborating with committee members and stakeholder groups to identify the key priorities and implementation and strategies that formed the foundation of the committee's report to the governor. We welcome you here tonight. Lisa, why don't you say hello and introduce James?
Hello, and thank you for those kind words, Elliot. With me tonight, as Elliot mentioned, is James Humphreys, our Director of Planning, Science, and GIS. And then also in the audience, we have two other Highlands Council employees. We have Carol Dickton, our Manager of Communications, and Herb August, our Manager of Grants Administration. So hello to you all. And just a quick thank you very much for organizing this event. We always love an opportunity to get the word out about the great work that the Highlands Council does.
Great, great. Well, happy that you're here tonight, James and Lisa. So on to some questions we have to get this conversation started. Lisa, we have seen some positive changes recently in attitudes towards the legislation and the Highlands Council. What would you account for that very positive circumstance?
Well, I think it's a couple of factors, Elliot. I think it's a combination that communities and counties are seeing the benefits of working with the Highlands Council and all that we bring to the table. I think they're finally acknowledging that there are a number of benefits to working with us. I think it also is about changes in leadership. You know, there was some negativity, as everybody knows, when the Highlands Act was passed. And sometimes it just takes time and patience to get past that. Again, changes at the local leadership level can account for that as well. Also, I will tell you that since I came to the council, we've ramped up some very aggressive outreach efforts to municipalities and counties to go to them and firsthand talk about the benefits of working with us and what we bring to the table. I think those outreach efforts have really begun to pay off. And then I also think that, you know, regional planning, as you all know, is a bit of a long game. It requires patience, not something I always have, but I'm learning in this context, you know, that sometimes it just takes a little while to change hearts and minds, as the expression goes. And then lastly, I think an important factor is advocacy from nonprofits like yours. I think that if communities might not necessarily want to be as willing to listen to a state agency, they might be a little more willing to listen to residents in their own communities that are advocating for them to work more closely together with the Highlands Council.
Great, great. And I mean, really, it can't be overstated, the changes in some attitudes. I mean, Warren County, who was part of a suit against the state to have the Highlands Act withdrawn, now we find a very friendly presence as the Commissioner Director Kern, who had some very kind words about his discussions with the council at our recent Northwest New Jersey Rivers Conference, where he was a plenary spokesman. And Hunterdon County has made some, I understand, very positive steps towards possibility conforming themselves, which, you know, county conformance is not quite as doesn't have the teeth of municipal conformance, but it certainly sends a good message to its constituent municipalities.
Right. And often it can make its constituent municipalities more open to considering conformance for themselves.
Yeah. So speaking of conformance, what is conformance all about? What are the things a municipality has to do? What's the dialogue, the give and take that goes on between the council and the municipality? How long does it take? And what does it mean to accomplish?
Okay, a lot of questions.
It's a big topic.
So basically, the regional master plan is implemented as towns and municipalities agree to adhere to its goals, policies, and objectives through a plan conformance process. And these goals, policies, and objectives revolve around protecting water, our natural resources, and supporting sustainable economic growth. Conformance advances these goals by ensuring that county and local planning align with these goals. And I want to emphasize something that, perhaps isn't emphasized enough, which is the Highlands Act focused on the importance of regional planning, and our agency works to do the same. In fact, the very first page of the Highlands Act speaks to the fact that protection of the region is so important that it can't be left to uncoordinated land use and the decisions of 88 separate municipalities, that it has to be part of a coordinated preservation effort. So we are especially proud at the Highlands Council of some of our more recent regional initiatives that work to accomplish this, like a major study with Rutgers on stormwater management and a number of specific plans that have come out of this. Also, we are working on an economic sustainability plan for the entire region, and we've made good progress. And lastly, another positive project that we like to tout, and maybe Alex might talk to this as well, is our interactive environmental resource inventory tool, which is going to be able to be utilized by every municipality and county in the region. So I don't know if I answered your string of questions. Did you want to know more about the process itself, or?
Well, let me throw in a plug.
Okay.
I think the Highlands Council website is one of the best websites in the state because of the information it has about the Highlands region. And your interactive map is just so easy to work with. You can find out so much about any area of the Highlands down to a parcel level. And you're constantly updating it and giving it new features. I can't tell you how many times I'm there, and you can print out maps. It's really quite well done, and that the Highlands Council is very transparent. All of the municipalities' conformance documents are there, available to anyone to see. If you want to find out what conformance is about, go to your municipality's section of conformance, and you can find out everything that they've done to this date. And your tracking sheets are always updated. It really is very helpful tool. So,
well, thank you. It's a good thing Carol is on this call then to hear the praise firsthand, because she manages all of that.
Great. And when will the interactive environmental resource inventory roll out? Do you have an idea?
I believe we are scheduled to start beta testing it soon. This spring, I think, is our goal. So depending on that, how that testing goes, I think our goal is to get it out and utilized by the fall. James, do you recall if that's about?
No, that's about right. Like everything these days, there's delays due to COVID and things like that. But yeah, they're hoping to beta test the application this spring, and then hopefully we'll be rolling it out and testing it with outside agencies later this year.
Right.
Great. So more on conformance.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just walk us through what a municipality does, who it involves at the municipality, what's the back and forth, how do you help them with grants to pay for the planning? Let's say, I'm a municipal leader in the Highlands, and you've come to the governing body and you got 3 minutes to walk me through what it's going to take.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Come on. My cat has decided to weigh in on this conversation. So in terms of the conformance process, what happens generally first is the municipality or county prepares an initial assessment report. And this reviews their master plan and their local ordinances to see what changes might be needed to bring them into conformance with the regional master plan. And this is actually a really important and sometimes underrated step, this initial assessment report, because as you know, often municipalities can be sitting on the fence, unclear about whether they might want to go through the conformance process or not. There can be uncertainty, which is usually not a good thing. So what this initial assessment report does is it really clarifies for the municipal leaders and their constituents exactly what would be involved for that municipality in conforming with the regional master plan. And frankly, it can be used as a tool for them to educate their constituents that in fact, conformance is a positive process for the municipality or county. And in terms of, sort of the procedure of it, what happens is the municipality will adopt a resolution petitioning the Highlands Council. Then the council staff prepares a petition report, which is posted for public comment for 30 days. And I will tell you right now, we pay very close attention to public comment, and it's not uncommon for us to occasionally tweak things based on public input. And then after that is done, the petition is sent to the Highlands Council for review and hopefully approval.
Okay. Now that's the petition. That just begins a process.
It does.
Once it's approved, what happens after that?
Generally, what happens is the staff liaison for that particular municipality sits down with the township officials and identifies what their priorities are and what the next steps are for implementing those priorities. It's generally put together in a schedule. The council will often assign dollar figures to some of these grants and projects. And this is a fluid document. As municipalities' priorities sometimes change, so can some of the specific items within their plan conformance petition.
Okay, so some of the modules that a municipality goes through, I mean, they have to prepare an environmental resource inventory that's Highlands specific. There are resource protection modules that may not be applicable to one municipality, but would be to another. What are some of those? What are some of those resource protection modules that a municipality would identify, work on, and then adopt?
Well, it is very specific to the municipality, as I mentioned, and the Highlands Council provides a wide range of plan conformance grants for them to enact some of these priorities. I think if you want to talk about sort of specific modules, I'm going to ask James to perhaps to fill in some of the information on that.
Yeah, as Lisa said, there's a wide variety of things that towns can work on. Some of the standard items would be, obviously you have your master plan elements, your land use ordinances, but then towns also get into stream corridor restoration plans, farmland preservation plans, historic preservation plans, critical habitat management plans, water use and conservation management plans. All of these items, are important aspects of the RMP. And Elliot, you're right. Not every town has that need, but that's where the initial assessment report comes in. The town looks at what they may need in the future and what may apply to them, and then we try to incorporate that into, if not the council's approval, at least into the future plan for working with that town. And again, we can provide grant funding all the way up to engineering for any of these plans. We've been working with Chester Borough. They're looking to replace their failing wastewater treatment plant. And, we've been looking at helping them to design a new treatment plant that will improve water quality going into the Black River. So, if towns have needs, the thing to do is to call and talk to the staff at the Highlands, and we'll see what we can do to work with them to improve the environment and improve the resources of the Highlands region. The RMP is not just limited to regulation. It's looking to improve not only natural resources, but farmland preservation and farmland production. So improve, sustainable economic development to make sure the region still functions, in that way as well. So it's really wide open. And I think we look to work with municipalities to develop those kind of resource and management plans.
I mean, this is one of the things I enjoy most about my job, is that we have these plan conformance grants, these non-competitive grants, which is really unheard of almost in state government. And these grants are designed to help municipalities and counties conform with the Highlands Act and the Regional Master Plan. And we have, frankly, a tremendous amount of flexibility as long as we're meeting those goals, to sit down with a community and say, okay, what are your priorities? What's important to you? And James ticked off a number of the categories, but it's almost endless, what we can support communities for: historic preservation, recreation, lake management, to name some that James hasn't already mentioned. And, you know, I think that what's exciting to me is when you sit down with a community and you're actually really problem solving. You're saying to them, what are your priorities for your town, and how can that dovetail with the priorities of the Highlands Council and the Regional Master Plan, and how can we help support you? By the way, it's not just grants that we have. We also have tremendous technical expertise on staff at the Highlands Council, and we love to help municipalities and counties with this technical expertise. And then lastly, the other thing we can provide is something that, you know, may not be highlighted enough, and I'd like to mention it here, is we can act as a liaison for municipalities and counties to other state agencies. If they've hit a roadblock, if they're not getting answers, if nobody's paying attention to their questions, you know, we can help intervene and try and assist them in this process with other state agencies.
One of the things I always tell municipal officials, especially ones that are hung up on that if they conform, they're giving up their home rule and their own what their vision is for their municipality. I find that when you put the politics of it aside and really look what the Highlands Council is offering, it pretty much matches what it is the municipality is trying to achieve. And why not, excuse me, I'm right on Main Street and there's some emergency vehicles. What the municipality is trying to achieve is generally the same thing. And what really is a municipality, what changes, what mostly changes a municipality in a negative way? And that is a huge development that is being forced on them either as because the municipality is intimidated by the well-heeled attorneys who are really frightening them into this thing they really don't want. Those are the character-changing events that really destroy the character of a community. Nobody wants.
Right.
And if they only had worked towards conformance, that could have prevented this. And if you really love the character of your community, conformance is one of the best things you can do to ensure that.
I can't tell you how many times we've sat down with municipalities and they've said, oh, we just did this or we just did that. We just paid, you know, $20,000 to update our local master plan. And, you know, these are all things that we could have funded for them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, their water quality management plan, you could have subsidized that or paid for that. Yeah. How much discretion does the Highlands Council have to help a municipality do something that on the surface is not consistent? But I mean, do you have the discretion to make exceptions to get them to conform, to move that good faith forward, or you draw the line?
Well, it's a good question. So obviously for conforming municipalities and counties, the whole range of plan conformance grants is at their disposal. For those that are not yet conforming, but considering conformance, number one, we can provide funding for that initial assessment grant, which I mentioned, which again goes a long way to helping a municipality or county make a decision. But we do have some flexibility to provide grants if a municipality or county is, in our opinion, considering conformance, making a good faith consideration. So there is some flexibility for municipalities and counties that are not officially conforming, but hopefully considering it.
Now, one of the benefits of conformance is the legal shield that the Highlands Council will provide a conformed municipality who is being challenged in court by, say, a developer because one of their ordinances, which is consistent with the state's regional master plan, they are challenging in court. The Highlands Act provides that the Highlands Council will support them with legal help, plus the fact that a conformed municipality's ordinances or master plan has the presumption of validity in court, which is a higher shield than a single municipality would normally have. Have you ever provided that legal support yet?
No, we've not been called on to.
Okay, but that's out there, correct?
What is that?
That legal shield is there, and it is considered a benefit, something that municipality currently does not have.
Yes, to my knowledge, yes. I mean, we did recently. I mean, this is public. It's not private. We did issue recently an RFQ, request for services, to potentially have some legal assistance in place should we need to proceed, because obviously you don't want to lose months and months in the process by trying to locate the appropriate assistance.
Right. Okay.
James, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just say, it has to be specific to a project that was denied based on Highlands regulations that were in conformance with the Highlands Act. And nothing has happened to that level yet. And I'd also like to point out that the RFQ that's out, it wasn't precipitated by anything we're expecting. It wasn't precipitated by a project we're expecting or has occurred. It just so happens the timing is just such now. You're getting more towns have adopted ordinances that are that may impact, the need for the legal shield.
Right. Well, maybe it hasn't been needed yet because people who would otherwise sue a municipality see that they have a higher bar to meet if they're going to go with a suit. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The bar is so high, it's hard to challenge, especially when the town doesn't have to pay for it.
Right. So has the Highlands, how can the Highlands Council, or how does the Highlands Council help municipalities meet their affordable housing obligations?
Well, one of the most simple ways that we can do that is we can provide funding for them to do an assessment so that they can make informed decisions about their affordable housing options. So
if there is a plan that the Highlands Council has helped the municipality draft, that has some credibility with the courts as being something that's credible and that the court is likely to accept it.
Well, we would provide a grant to the municipality to conduct that analysis on their own.
Okay, so it's just financial support. It's not.
Yeah, that would be. It would be a plan conformance grant.
Okay, but they would use their resources or their expert who they've hired. It wouldn't be any staff members of the Highlands Council helping
Correct.
draft that.
Correct.
As an advocate, speaking about exemptions, we have an issue with Highlands Act exemption number 4, and that's the Highlands exemptions, the 17 exemptions plus waivers that were built into the act apply in the preservation area under the Highlands rules, but they also apply in conforming municipalities. The language is the same whether it's the preservation area or the conformed planning area. Exemption number 4, which the courts have opined lacks clear direction, is the one that says is the one for reconstruction of a structure for any purpose, and up to 125% of the footprint. Now, is what the issue we have is that there is a municipal exemption program where municipalities can be certified after going through a training program administered by the Highlands Council, that they could give certain exemptions on their own. Exemption number 4 is part of that.
Mhm.
When that exemption is applied for from DEP, from the Department of Environmental Protection, that application for an exemption is noticed in the DEP bulletin. So people are aware and can investigate it. When it's applied for directly with a municipality, a certified municipality, there is no public notice, and we don't find out about it until after it's been granted, and whatever the development that is exempted now begins to go through something further on in the approval process where there is notice. Is there anything that can be done to ensure that there's public notice for a municipal applied exemption number 4?
Well, it's my understanding that, we list all municipally issued exemptions on our website. But as you know, exemptions are not permits, and therefore public notice of these particular exemptions is not required. So I don't necessarily foresee that changing.
Well, for an agency that is very respected for its transparency, the DEP provides that public notice, but the Highlands Council doesn't. So you would reconsider that. That would be something that we would very much appreciate. And
Okay.
yes,
I
it's
will
not,
discuss that. I will discuss that. Yeah.
thank you. Agreed. It's not a permit, but it is an indication that something's going to occur, that there is some interest in the development.
Okay.
So I'll ask a couple more questions before we move on to Alex Ambrose's presentation on environmental commissions in the Highlands. What do you see in the next couple of years? What's your operating vision for moving forward as a Highlands Council in the Highlands region?
Okay. Well, I think overall, the goals are obviously to continue to work to implement the goals of the Highlands Act and the Regional Master Plan. Specifically, in addition to those, for me, and I think for the agency, continued outreach is key. We're making significant strides. I think there's momentum. I think it builds on itself. So it's very important to see that work continue. In addition, as I mentioned, there's been much more of an emphasis on regional planning and regional work, and I think that's critically important to continue. We're bolstering that in many aspects. One of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about is what the Highlands Council is doing in the area of climate change. And as you know, the RMP, when it was drafted, was largely silent on this issue for the most part. And as you know, the governor somewhat recently convened an interagency council on climate resiliency to begin to tackle this in a meaningful way. We asked to be included on that because we wanted to ensure that issues specific to the Highlands region were considered. For better or worse, sometimes when you talk about climate change, the emphasis seems to always be on the coast. So we wanted to make, as I said, make certain that our issues were part of the discussion. I think we've been very successful with that. I believe they're planning on coming out with their strategy by Memorial Day weekend. And one of the things that we hope to be doing is, you may have seen that the governor recently announced some new resiliency requirements when municipalities update their master plans. And so one of the things we're talking about internally is whether we can fund those updates as part of a category of plan conformance grants. So I guess that was a sort of long-winded answer to your question, but I think that I would, in addition, again, to working to further the goals of the Act and the RMP, I think that continuing to try and adapt to the changing climate in New Jersey, both literally and figuratively. I'd like to see the agency continue to be responsive to the needs of its municipalities and counties.
Okay. Well, I would hope one of the most important climate mitigation resources that the Highlands has are in its forests, and their efficiency in absorbing and storing atmospheric carbon to mitigate for the greenhouse gases that are emitted in New Jersey. So we would hope that another level of protection of our forests are considered, because that's a very important resource. And one other thing I should mention, which is really a great milestone recently, and that is the endorsement of the Regional Master Plan by the State Planning Commission, an agency that the governor has reinvigorated, which we welcome. And finally, after 12 years being overdue, that the State Planning Commission has endorsed the Regional Master Plan. And that means that municipalities that are conformed will also have the benefit of state plan endorsement. And maybe if you have 30 seconds, you can talk about that. That would be great.
Yeah,
how that helps us.
This is huge. This is, and basically it's an update to a memorandum of understanding between the State Planning Commission, the Highlands Council, and the Office of Planning Advocacy. It's been long awaited, and we have essentially agreed to coordinate on endorsements, center designations, a number of other issues, conformance being the big ticket item. And it basically means that any master plan or development regulations that are adopted as part of the Highlands plan conformance process are now deemed to have the same equivalence through the State Planning Commission process.
Right.
So it's, brings significant benefits for both of our agencies and all the municipalities that will be impacted.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and James. For now, we'll come back with questions from participants, but for now, let me introduce Alex Ambrose, who's the policy associate at ANJAC, who's going to talk about environmental commission's roles in protecting the region's resources and how they can be effective.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you, Lisa and James. I always learn anything when you folks are on, so thank you. I also just wanted to point out, I saw some questions in the chat that folks were eager to have Lisa and James answer their questions. I wanted to assure you all that Lisa will be staying until the end, until after my presentation. So do not fret. She will be able to answer those questions. So let me start sharing my screen. I have, I'm sure no one is sick of Zoom presentations, so I'm going to start sharing my screen here. So as Elliot mentioned, I am Alex Ambrose. I am the Policy Associate at ANJAC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. We're an over 50-year-old organization that helps local officials make good decisions about the environment. And this is what we look like now. We are working from home, still trying to adapt and still helping environmental commissions meet and keep their influence. And I also just wanted to quickly say that I am also on an environmental commission. I am a recent new resident of Clinton Township, also in the Highlands. So I have a little bit of experience with this as well. So I'm going to ask Zach to do a quick poll. The poll question is, which best describes you? And the choices are you a member of an environmental commission? Are you an aspiring environmental commissioner? Are you simply an active and engaged resident? Are you a local official besides an environmental commission member? Or other, if you think none of these describe you. So I will be singing the Jeopardy tune while we wait for this. No, we'll just give this about 10 more seconds for folks to answer, and then I will ask Zach to close the poll and publish it. The reason I want to ask this is this will help me tailor my presentation to my audience. So let's take a look. All right, so this is exciting. So we have a little bit of a mix. We have 27% said they are a member of an environmental commission. 1% is an aspiring EC member. 23%, the majority are just active and engaged residents, which is awesome. A few local officials and some other. So thank you for participating in that poll. Since many of you are already on an EC or consider yourself engaged, I can kind of go through this part quickly, because what I'm going to talk about next is what is an environmental commission. So there is enabling legislation that talks about what an environmental commission is. Environmental commissions are, when I say EC, that stands for Environmental Commission, just so everyone knows. They serve in an advisory role. So they are appointed by the mayor or sometimes just the governing body. And unlike the planning board or the zone of adjustment, you don't actually get to rule over planning decisions, but you are super influential in being that advisor and making sure that the environment stays at the front of everyone's mind. The law requires 5 to 7 members and 2 alternates appointed by a mayor, and one of them is a shared member from the planning board and the environmental commission. So they are a full voting member on that environmental commission. They are often referred to as the planning board liaison. Each town needs to have this enabling ordinance in order to have an environmental commission. There are different kinds of, there's sometimes environmental committees, there are sometimes green teams. Those do not have to be established by ordinance. Green teams are established by resolution, and committees are established ad hoc. So that is at the mayor's discretion. There are some different formats of environmental commissions. So for example, Cranford EC has people called associate members that don't vote, but are considered members of the Environmental Commission and are important advisors. And Wyckoff has junior commissioners, as you can see in that picture, which is very exciting because these young people are going to become the future. So this is what the law requires: rolling 3-year terms for the Environmental Commission members, so that a few of them are rotating out all the time, so you aren't all of a sudden left with 7 fresh new Environmental Commission members who have no experience. The law also says that environmental commissions are subject to the sunshine law. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, as we have often heard, so they are required to conform with the Open Public Meetings Act. They are also required to produce an annual report that can include the goals of the Environmental Commission, what was accomplished in the year, and the law also says you shall keep an index of open lands in your jurisdiction. So that's all the law requires. So all the rest of it is kind of up to you, how you want your environmental commission to be. So what a lot of environmental commissions do is study and make recommendations on water, air, waste, noise, landscape protection, environmental appearance, flora and fauna, et cetera, et cetera. One big way that environmental commissions are important is to create that open space index that I talked about, and to create an NRI or an ERI. So Lisa talked a little bit about this, as did Elliot. An ERI is an environmental resource inventory, and an NRI is a natural resource inventory. They're both the same thing, you can call them either. What that is an inventory of not just open space, but all of the resources in that area. So it will talk about what kind of geology there is, what's the water quality like, what kind of flora and fauna do you have in the area? Is there anything unique about the area? Is it 90% forest? Do you only have 1 square foot of green in that area? Those are all things that are going to be talked about in that ERI and NRI. And like Lisa said, the Highlands Council is working on creating an ERI for the entire Highlands region, which is absolutely amazing because this can be incredibly expensive for a municipality to do. You normally have to hire a consultant. It is also a long process to go through because if you have never had one, or if you haven't updated it in a while, things can change very quickly. So sometimes I'll go to a municipality and ask them for their ERI, and they'll hand me a book from 1982. And I will ask, is there a digital version? And they will say, we did not have a computer back then. So having that resource that the Highlands Council is going to offer is amazing and very exciting. Real quick, these are some things that an environmental commission should do at the, whether they're just starting or at the beginning of their year. Create your mission statement. What is your goal? Do you want to just be an advisor to the council, or do you want to be outreach for the municipality, or both, anything in between? Create your own bylaws, voting, taking minutes, attendance, et cetera, et cetera. Set your annual goals, set your annual report, and figure out your budget, which could include your dues to ANJAC. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to win friends and influence your elected officials. Some of this may look familiar. I do a little bit of this presentation a lot. So one question we get asked a lot is, how do I get my elected officials to listen to me? And I'm going to give you a few tips. So how to become an influential environmental commission. And a lot of this can also translate into just being an active and influential resident as well. Number 1, give your electeds easy wins. So on the right, this is my old hometown, shout out to Berkeley Heights. Mayor Devaney and Councilman Yellen were invited to this, the opening of the new community garden. On the left is Rich Leister, who is the Environmental Commission chair. He invited them to come to the ceremonial ribbon cutting. Great photo opportunity, exciting time for them to address their constituents. You can have a movie night. So ANJAC has a bunch of rights to a bunch of environmental movies. We have the DVDs, which may not be very useful right now, but it costs no money to show this movie since we already have the rights. It costs almost no money to promote it if you're using mostly the internet. And then you can invite your elected official to speak ahead of time for a few moments. And that'll give them time to connect with some of their constituents. Attend the council and committee meetings. So this is something very simple, but I have surprisingly met a lot of environmental commission members that don't know what's going on in their municipality. Be willing to listen and learn. So this one is one of my personal favorites. This goes along with attending meetings. Sometimes something as simple as just asking a clarifying question or asking a question about the budget goes a long way with your council members to show that you're paying attention. And finally, something called thanks and spanks. So this is a humorous term that is sometimes used in political organizing that talks about rewarding your elected officials for doing what you asked for and holding them accountable if they don't. So remembering to close that loop. If you ask them to do something and they do it, remember to go back and say thank you. If you ask them to do something and they don't, remember to hold them accountable and say, why didn't you listen? Or why didn't you do what you promised to do? Dealing with a challenging administration. So sometimes you have done all of that stuff and you just can't get them to listen to you. Number one is offer solutions, not just opposition. You do not want to be the Environmental Commission that is known for opposing everything, going to every council meeting and just saying, no, 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 no. Offer solutions. So like Lisa said, there's lots of funding available, especially in the Highlands region. ANJAC also offers some small grants for stewardship. Research some of those fund, council members always like funding. They like hearing that they can get funding for something. Build a base of support in the community. So if you have turned to your elected officials and they aren't listening to you, turn around and talk to their residents and their constituents. If you're trying to start a community garden and they aren't listening to you, try to get a bunch of residents to come in and talk. Build that base of support in the community. That's very important. Next, work on projects that are of interest to the governing body. So this is also why it's important to pay attention during committee meetings. If they are getting a bunch of residents that are coming in and talking about flooding, coming in and saying that you want to build a rain garden using funding from Rutgers is going to be of interest to them. So really pay attention to what residents are saying and what the council wants to solve. And finally, don't take it personally. At the end of the day, we want endless resources. We wish we had infinite resources and we could solve every problem, but unfortunately, that is not the reality. That these council members do have limited resources that have to be allocated certain ways. So it's not always your fault. It is not your personal fault, or even that what you are asking for is not important. So just keep that in mind as well. Be an informed citizen. So this is one of my fictional political heroes, CJ Craig. Decisions are made by those who show up. So like I said, attend council meetings. Make yourself known to the planning board, the environmental commission, if you are not on the environmental commission. Make yourself known to the council and committee. If you are new in the town, or if you are a new member of an environmental commission, or like I said, even if you're just a resident, ask for a meeting with one of your council members or your mayor. You have a right to do that. And just make yourself known. We always say your first time talking to an elected official should not be you yelling at them. You should try to establish that relationship ahead of time so that they know you. Know your rights. So know that you have, the rights to the minutes of meetings. You have the rights to ask questions during public hearings. Learn as much as you can about what your rights are and know how to exercise them. And reach out to resources. So especially if you're in the Highlands region, the Highlands Coalition is a wonderful resource. If you are an environmental commission, ANJAC is a wonderful resource as well. Not that I'm biased or anything, but know who your a local watershed group is, know who can help you advocate for what you're looking for. Let me do a quick time check. Whew, I am coming up on my time. I'm going to run through this very quickly, but I think this is an important example. So this is a quick case study in how an environmental commission and a couple of excited residents can really change, can really make change. So there was a proposed lighted turf field on a 45-acre parcel in Chester Township. I think it was actually Black River Fields. The township wanted a Highlands exemption, but they did not want to do an environmental impact study. So this was, and it involved the school board and the town council. It was a little bit complicated. Anyway, the town applied to the DEP for this exemption so that they could build this field, which triggered a public hearing. And that public hearing was eventually extended due to concerns about how the purchasing of that field was funded. What ended up happening was the EC chair, the screenshot is from a meeting that the EC chair had with the town council. You can tell this was recent because it happened on Zoom. So the EC chair told the council ahead of time, so give a heads up when you can, just so you know, I'm going to be coming to this meeting and I'm going to be asking you to do an environmental impact study on this property. That was all the EC was asking for. Can you please do an environmental impact study on this property? It was a very short presentation and it was very straightforward. So keeping your electeds informed, not just showing up and surprising them, can really go a long way. Let me just make sure. Oh, and I also wanted to say I take no credit for this, for the story that I'm about to tell you about Chester Township. The Highlands Coalition really did a lot of work, as did the group that I'm about to tell you about. So I also wanted to mention that there are ways to be respectful without being a doormat. So that's why I said you can give your council members just a heads up that you are going to be opposing them, or that you're going to say something that they may not agree with. You can give them a heads up, but then remember that you do have the right to oppose them. So they formed a coalition group. So this is separate from the Environmental Commission. It was CCCT, the Concerned Citizens of Chester Township. And they fundraised, they did grassroots organizing. They wrote to the DEP who the exemption was going to be through. They worked so hard, and in turn, DEP denied the exemption, which was a win because this field was a turf field, which, as we all know, is not the best environmentally. The lights would have interfered with the nearby wildlife. And just the fact that they didn't do an environmental impact, they weren't willing to do an environmental impact study. This was, like I said, big win for Chester Township, the Concerned Citizens of Chester Township. It was very exciting. So it just goes to show how a small group can really make a difference. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not plug Ann Jack's annual Fundamentals for Environmental Commissioners course. You do not have to be on an environmental commission to join us. It is free for ANJAC members, and it is only $35 for non-members. And with that, you get access to all of the workshops along with all of the recordings afterwards. The topics we are going through are EC powers and responsibilities, environmental resource inventories, master plans and ordinances. And finally, what you are seeing here is site plan review, which is one way that environmental commissions and active citizens can really make a difference in their local township or municipality. So thank you. That is the end of my presentation. I wanted to give you ANJAC's email address. If for some reason we do not get to your question, or if you have questions about how to start an EC, how to join your EC, anything that I talked about here, please feel free to email us and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, and I believe we are now moving into the question portion.
Yes, thank you for a very informative presentation, Alex. I must say that ANJEC has been a very vital partner of the coalition since the coalition was formed in helping us protect Highlands resources. So you do a lot more than environmental commissions.
Yeah, I guess we should say ANJEC is also a member of the Highlands Coalition.
Yes, and an important one. So there are lots of questions. Thank you for coming back, Lisa and James. So let's get right to them. Here's one. Outside of the Highlands, a town located outside of the Highlands, in Essex County, for example, contribute to the Highlands Council mission and support resource protection in the Highlands?
Yes, although not directly. Obviously, as a town outside of the Highlands region, you're not eligible to become a conforming municipality. But you know, to sort of think more abstractly, obviously, a large part of our mission is water protection and water conservation. So there's certainly things that people can do in their individual communities and counties that further the mission of the Highlands Council. But in terms of being a conforming municipality, unfortunately, if you're outside of the boundaries of the Highlands region, that's not an option.
And I would also add that on the Highlands oh my God, Highlands Council, Commission, Council, Coalition, the Highlands Council's website, they have all of the model ordinances for conformance. Those are extremely useful resources that that municipalities even outside of the Highlands can use as kind of a template or even just inspiration if they would like to protect their resources at a stronger level.
And also, a municipality outside of the Highlands can get funded by the Highlands Council to study if they would, if they could become a Highlands Development Credit receiving area, which
Correct.
would be extremely helpful in meeting the objectives of the Highlands Act.
Correct. There is funding for them to undergo a study to determine if that is something that they wish to pursue, to become a TDR receiving zone.
Yeah, we need one at least.
Right. And Alex is absolutely correct. You know, all of our ordinances and, you know, the projects that we promote can certainly occur in other parts of the state. It's just that, you know, plan conformance dollars are targeted only at Highlands municipalities and counties. By the way, I just want to commend Alex for a great presentation and tell you that I agree with everything that she said. From my own personal perspective, I sit on Parsippany's Environmental Advisory Committee and also on their green team. So I sort of, you know, see both ends of the spectrum. And from my perspective as executive director at the Highlands Council, I think that the role of environmental commissions and local activists can be critical in this process because, you know, I mentioned earlier, often your local officials or county officials can be firmly impaled on a fence. But if they're hearing from their own constituents, from their own residents, how important this is, that can often really move the needle on the whole process.
Okay. This is a question for Lisa. I have been encouraging environmental commission members from several Highlands municipalities, both conforming and non-conforming, to contact their Highlands Council liaisons and or you for information on economic and environmental sustainability program. First, am I violating protocol by suggesting these folks go directly to you for information? Second, can you tell us if the program is currently able to process applications and make grant awards?
Okay, so you're not violating protocol, but one thing I want to mention that perhaps I should have clarified in the beginning is our plan conformance grants can legislatively can only go to municipalities and counties. So we don't have the ability to give them to environmental commissions directly and so forth. But when we get approached by people from environmental commissions that want to, you know, get something started in their town, one of the most important things they need to do, to the extent that they can, is work with their local officials, because ultimately that's who we work directly with. So we encourage environmental commissions and local activists to start the process with their local officials. And that can be, you know, that can be really very effective. And what was the second part of your question, Elliot?
Can you tell us if programs?
Yes, we have grant dollars again. Grant dollars are flowing. Things were frozen for a while due to COVID-19 with everybody, but we are once again administering grants, awarding grants.
Okay. The following question is something I've discussed with you before, Lisa, but this does not come from me. This comes from a member of the audience. The Highlands Council used to review every project in the Highlands planning area, regardless of conformance status or consistency with all applicable provisions of the regional master plan, as a condition of approval for a WQMP amendment, Water Quality Management Plan amendment. This stopped under Governor Christie, and the Highlands Council has not returned to that standard. What is the reason the council has not resumed use of this much more comprehensive protocol to ensure all projects are consistent with the regional master plan?
Right. So this question relates to the issue, you know, as we've talked about before, about the Highlands Council entering into a memorandum of understanding with the DEP regarding consistency determinations in non-conforming planning area towns. And we have looked into this and it was determined that the Highlands Act does not contain sufficient authority to permit us to do this in non-conforming planning area towns.
Okay. Next question. In a conforming municipality, if a conforming municipality is required to update its Highlands Affordable Housing and Fair Share Plan to comply with emerging legal, statutory, or administrative policy changes, what procedures must the municipality take with respect to advising the council and requesting approval?
I'm going to let James answer that one, if that's okay with you, James.
Sure. So a conforming municipality, first of all, a conforming municipality would be eligible for a grant to prepare that plan. So I'll throw that out there. The second is that the Highlands Council doesn't necessarily review to make sure it meets every legal requirement for an affordable housing plan. Generally, what we do under the current legal situation is we review the sites they propose to meet their obligation to make sure those sites would be consistent with the regional master plan. Now, obviously, at the stage a housing plan is developed, they don't have a fully engineered site plan. So we're generally looking at, you know, is it an area that's eligible for sewer service? Is it an area that's not severely impacted by environmental resources such that it is a developable site? And generally, that's what our review is limited to.
Okay. This is a question for Alex. What can be done if an environmental commission is unresponsive to outreach? Sometimes when I reach out to a town, there is no information or names listed for the environmental commission contacts, or they don't get back to me. Is it best to go to the mayor or another point of contact beyond that?
That is a great question. And if you have an easy answer for how to get EC members to answer you, let me know, because I have the same problem sometimes. However, I did mention during my presentation that environmental commissions are subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, which means that every single one of their meetings has to be posted publicly and has to be available to the public. Obviously, right now, that does pose a bit of a technological problem. My environmental commission the other day realized that we have not been posting the link to the meeting online. So obviously it is available. We have invited residents via email if they ask, but we have not been actually posting the link online so people can just join if they want. So sometimes it is literally just a slip of the mind. It is purely by accident. I don't like assuming negative intent, but that could also be the fact. So like I said, it has to be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. So if they are meeting, it does have to be posted on the municipality's website, and it has to be posted in their whatever their publication of choice is. Usually it's like a local paper or something like that. So do some research, figure out if they are meeting. Honestly, sometimes ECs just don't meet for a while if they are either don't have the blessing of the town council or committee. Obviously, recently there's been technological problems with trying to meet while still trying to maintain the Open Public Meetings Act. It is a very good idea to contact the township clerk or the municipal clerk. They are usually more responsive than the mayor or council members who usually have other jobs, but someone administrative, so like the clerk or the business administrator, should be able to put you in touch with the correct person. But like I said, know your rights. There's you can submit Open Public Meetings Act requests to figure out what the Environmental Commission has been talking about and if they have been meeting. So if you continue to encounter problems, feel free to reach out to Anjak.
Does the Highlands Council play a role in the development of forestry plans? For example, on Sparta Mountain, what if that forestry management plan impacts water quality or habitat in a Category 1 waterway?
So for all intents and purposes, the issue of forestry was essentially exempted from the Highlands Act, for better or worse. So what we're doing right now is we're continuing to work with the DEP on their forest action plan. And it has been mentioned, obviously the issue of forest preservation is front and center when you talk about a climate resiliency strategy. And so we are focusing on that, as Elliot mentioned, also regarding its importance in carbon sequestration and the need to reduce the fragmentation of these forests in our region. But our role is extremely limited because the issue of forestry, again, is not dealt with in the Highlands Act.
Right. Alex, a member of the concerned citizens of Chester Township, thanks you for sharing their story. And they seek Highlands Council support to amend the RMP to prohibit new installations of synthetic turf in the Highlands region due to the threat to water quality. Can you, I guess, Lisa, give us any advice to garner support and expertise from Highlands Council's resources to possibly bring this to fruition?
Well, I do know that this issue has been raised with us, and staff looked pretty extensively into the issue of whether there are currently, standards for artificial turf, and whether there might be some existing policies that take a look at some of the concerns. And right now, current standards for artificial turf consider it an impervious surface. So when we review potential projects, they are reviewed in accordance with the current stormwater regs and have to meet other standards of the RMP. I know that this issue has been raised at public council meetings, so the council is aware of it as an issue, but that's sort of where we stand on it right now.
And I would just like to jump in and talk about another way that citizens and environmental commissions can be involved in the process for a proposal such as that. So because turf field is considered an impervious area, especially with the new stormwater rules that have to be updated by March 2nd of this year, it is it's a very good idea to review those site plans and ask if let's say this project does go through, you can ask them to install more green infrastructure and say, hey, council, or hey, planning board, I don't think you should accept this proposal unless they install more green infrastructure. Environmental commissions, one of their powers is that they legally get all of the site plan reviews that go before the planning board. So if you request them, you have to get them, and you can review them, and you can go back to the planning board and say, hey, this is not going to be good. This is what we suggest, and this is what we're hoping that you will tell that developer, that they should install more green infrastructure. They should reduce the amount of impervious area. That's one way to get involved in the process. And like I said, we get more in depth in that in our fundamentals course.
This is a question for the council. What is the Highlands Council's view on the Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company's expansion plans that present significant risks to the Highlands resources, particularly the compressor station in West Milford and in northern New Jersey in general? Many believe that the Highlands Act and the council would prevent this type of development in sensitive Highlands areas. Please comment. Thank you.
Okay. So as you mentioned, this is regarding a compressor station for Tennessee Gas Pipeline. It's located, as you mentioned, in West Milford. This is currently an application before the DEP for a Highlands applicability determination, exemption number 11. And this is for the construction of an electric powered compressor, as I mentioned, in West Milford. And, it bears reminding everyone that this is only for the compressor station, not the pipeline expansion, this particular application. So the Highlands Council role is we assess whether the project is consistent with the goals of the Highlands Act. We look at potential resource impacts of the specific development proposed. It is the DEP that determines whether this project is exempt from the Highlands Act. The council doesn't approve the project. That, again, is the role of the DEP. And we did recently, I think it was back in October, after examining this project, we did issue a letter finding that this project was consistent with the Highlands Act, and we notified DEP of that decision. And this was based on our determination that there were minimal impacts to the natural resources for this particular project. James, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that summarizes it. I mean, again, we can't look at the impacts beyond the project that's presented to us. So the impacts were specific to the construction of the compressor station, which there were no environmental resource impacts from the actual construction of the compressor station. That's not to say there's not bigger issues with projects like this, but statutorily, we're limited to look at what we can look at. And in this case, DEP has the jurisdiction to review the exemption and forwards us the project to review, and that's the project we review.
I thought this exemption 11 for upgrades to utilities has the stipulation it has to be consistent with the goals and objectives of the Highlands Act and the Regional Master Plan. But I believe this went for exemption number 4, which does not have that stipulation. All it has to do is not exceed 125% of the footprint. But whatever, this does bring up a question. Let's say it was exemption number 4, which is very vague. It allows for the reconstruction for any purpose or for any reason. I believe it's reason. Does that mean they're reconstructing regardless if it was abandoned, regardless if it was burnt down and they're reconstructing, or does it mean they can put whatever they want there? Let's say a barn, and they're going to put a compressor station. The 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 exemption as it's written is very vague on that. Is there any guidance that the Highlands Council has, if it was in their jurisdiction, in the planning area, or that you know about in the preservation area, which helps give some guidance to that, so every developer isn't making up an interpretation on their own of what that means?
So I'll let James answer that, but I just want to reiterate that for the Tennessee Gas project, we're talking about an exemption number 11.
Okay.
Okay. James, you want to deal with the question about exemption number 4?
Sure. So the vast majority of exemption 4s have been in the preservation area, right? Because that's the area that's regulated. And we're really only starting to see exemption 4s in the planning area since towns have adopted ordinances, and that's just happened recently. So there is no written guidance. All it is to go by is previous approvals that the Department of Environmental Protection has issued, and there's also at least one significant administrative law case that addresses, the how you calculate the impervious surface and the location of the impervious surface in relation to the impervious surface that pre-existed it. That said, there is nothing that seems to limit the future use of the property. So if you're like you say, if you have a barn that you're replacing with a compressor station and it meets the requirements, it's a reconstruction, there's no limitation on the change of use from one use to another. As long as it meets the reconstruction, definition, and it's replacing the impervious surface and it's not exceeding the limitations, that would meet under an exemption 4. And that, as far as I'm aware, that's always been interpreted that way. There's never been any kind of look at what is the use, what was the use, and what is the use. It's all what was there impervious surface wise and what's proposed to be there impervious surface wise.
So it doesn't mean reconstruction for any reason. It means for any change in land use, it's okay.
Yes, that's the way
it's currently interpreted.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. It was mentioned that there is some future planning in regards to sustainable economic development in the Highlands. What specifically does that refer to? Regenerative agriculture, ecotourism opportunities like rail trail development and additional parks, farm-to-table restaurants. Any comments would be appreciated.
Well, it's a broad category and a broad question. So I'm going to try and narrow it down. First of all, again, I'm a broken record, but we have plan conformance grants for everything. And when the Highlands Act was written and passed, it recognized the importance of supporting sustainable economic development and redevelopment and growth in the region. So that's something we always like to remind people is an important component. So we have, again, a variety of plan conformance grants to help municipalities and counties, ranging from downtown redevelopment plans, economic development plans, revitalization, historic preservation, etc. But aside from our plan conformance grants specifically, we have embarked on an economic sustainability project at the council. It was kicked off, I guess, about a year ago. And we are working to develop an economic sustainability plan for the region. We have a steering committee in place. We have lots of good expertise from all over the region providing input. And the goal is that this project will result in a comprehensive plan that involves an economic analysis and profile of the Highlands region, along with recommendations, specific recommendations for strategies and policies to guide economic growth in the region. And we had a little bit of a delay with COVID, but we do expect that this plan will be released by the end of this year. And like I said, we have tremendous feedback and assistance in this. And, the issue of the financial impact of COVID-19 on businesses in the Highlands region is really front and center. In some ways, we're very lucky that we had just kicked off this project when COVID-19 hit, because it allows us to pivot and incorporate that as, potentially a major impact that will guide the results of this study. So there you go. More information than you wanted.
We're coming up on 7:30, so we have one last question. For those in the HDC Highlands Development Credit Program, are there any funds now or upcoming in the near future to execute this program? And how does this program work?
The shorter answer is there's not much in the way of funding, unfortunately. And James can elaborate on this, but essentially it's a program where it's a land preservation program along with our open space preservation program. But how it differs is we're essentially purchasing credits for the development rights from willing sellers of properties. So they essentially sell us their development rights. And James, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little on that process.
No, the person who asked this, actually, I owe them a telephone call, so I apologize for not having to call them back yet. But Lisa's right. We don't see any funding immediately. There's a slim chance that the Highlands Conservation Act, the federal program, could be amended that may allow the use of into the HDC program again. I would just encourage you to keep in contact with us. We're always trying to seek additional sources of funding. We'll be looking to work with other state agencies that do have funding to try and come up with some new programs that perhaps can address some of these properties that don't fit into the existing land preservation programs, because we do recognize that there's a big gap and that our HDC program did help those properties that may not have fit under farmland preservation or interested green acres to a sufficient amount. So, even if we don't get HDC funding, we're going to try and work with those agencies that got money through the corporate business tax to perhaps develop new programs that could help in the Highlands region.
Great. Well, Lisa and James, thank you so much. This has been perhaps long overdue, but very informative. I guess a silver lining to COVID is to be able to have discussions like this. Thank you, Alex. Always a pleasure. This is being recorded. We'll have this shortly on our YouTube channel. So if there's something you wanted to hear again, or somebody should watch this program, just go to YouTube and search New Jersey Highlands Coalition. All of our webinars are there. Thank you all so much. I just want to mention that our next webinar is Grown in New Jersey, Sustainable Food Systems in the Garden State, with Tobias Fox of Newark Science and Sustainability Incorporated, and Sean Ananko from Grow It Green Morristown. That's on March 11th, and Zach has put the link to register in the chat. Following that is Restoring Native Edible and Medicinal Plants with Jared Rosenbaum on March 26th. Subscribe to the Highlands Council mailing list, stay updated, and follow us on social media. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Have a good night and stay safe. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot and Zach.